Chapter 354, All of You Will Die. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. The Square Commandery Prince and Jin Quan were both among the top 10 warriors in the Square Commandery, particularly, Square Commandery Prince, who was ranked 3rd. The Square Commandery was a medium-level commandery which was 10 times stronger than the Yunwu Commandery. So the Square Commandery's top 10 warriors were also highly respected as legends in the Yunwu Commandery. Now, 2 of the top 10 warriors were here. What's more, 6 masters in the Heaven Realm and many other warriors in the Earth Realm from the black market were also on their way here. Zhang Yuochen was only a young warrior who was less than 20 years old. What could he do when so many masters were here? Zhang Yuochen glanced at Wang Jinyi. His gaze was like 2 cold needles stabbing into Wang Jinyi's pupils, making Wang Jinyi shiver. His eyes dulled and he almost fell off the savage beast. Wang Jinyi immediately ran his genuine chi to dissolve the power of Zhang Yuochen's gaze. He cried, "Zhang Yuochen, I don't believe you are that powerful." After saying this, Wang Jinyi stood up on the savage beast's back. Holding his 3-meter-long spear, he jumped up and stabbed Black Whirl. This spear technique was very powerful. As the spear turned, the spiritual chi between heaven and earth moved along with it, forming a spear vortex. With the stabbing of the spear, countless wind blades flew out of the vortex, making swishing noise. Wang Jinyi was very talented. He had once defeated an opponent who was 2 realms stronger than him. It was during that battle that the Square Commandery Prince noticed him and recruited him as his favorite disciple. His genuine chi carried the power of wind nature. Thus, whenever he used his genuine chi, wind blades would form. Crack, crack. Some of the wind blades slashed onto the street and cut up the half-meter thick slates, leaving behind 2-meter-long cracks, while other wind blades flew to the shops around them, cutting through the walls and pillars. This destructive spear technique wrecked the whole street. Many fun-seeking warriors were accidentally injured by the wind blades, and some of them even lost their lives. How terrifying. That's the power of a martial arts legend. Step back, everyone. We are risking our lives if we stay here. An elder in the Earth Realm roared, and then he was the first to run away. There were not many martial arts legends in the whole the Yunwu Commandery. Each one of them was a great martial expert. Knowing that the man with the long spear was a martial arts legend in the Heaven Realm, everyone was shocked. Then immediately they started to run away. A martial arts legend has come here in person to fight with the 9th Prince. The 9th Prince has quite the honor. Where on earth did Zhang Tangai invite so many masters from? It seems that the 9th Prince doesn't even have a chance to escape. The fun-seeking warriors all stood far away. Only a few confident warriors stood near. They wanted to see if the 9th Prince could escape from the martial arts legend's attack. Swoosh. Everyone was dazzled. They could only see a beam of sword radiance. The sword light was so bright that they were all blinded for a while. After they reopened their eyes, they saw that the 9th Prince was still standing there, while the martial arts legend had become a headless body and was lying on the ground. Bam! A bloody head dropped down from the air like a ball. It bounced on the ground and rolled to Wang Jinyi's armpit. Seeing this, everyone gasped. A martial arts legend in the Heaven Realm died just like this. Who killed him? Nobody believed that Wang Jinyi was killed by Zhang Yuochen. They thought maybe some masters were hiding in the dark. Only a few warriors with higher cultivation vaguely saw Zhang Yuochen attack just now, and they were greatly astonished, because Zhang Yuochen was so fast like wind and thunder that Wang Jinyi lost his head before he could block. Their warriors from the Square Commandery were shocked as well. Wang Jinyi was a relatively strong master, but he could not even block one of Zhang Yuochen's blows. Humphrey. Jin Quan hummed. On a nice plain wolf. He came out from behind the Square Commandery Prince's back. He stared at Zhang Yuochen from a height and said, "I'll be your opponent." Jin Quan stretched out his 10 fingers and suddenly bent them into claws. PHHT. His 10 fingers were enveloped with genuine chi. It looked like there were wisps of electricity flowing on his skin. His old hands looked just like electric tiger claws. Wisps of lightning also appeared on the ground, looking like purple snakes crawling toward Zhang Yuochen. Jin Quan was the 10th ranked master in the Square Commandery, and his martial cultivation was much higher than Wang Jinyi's. Before he had even struck, He had already created a great momentum. Swoosh. Jiang Yuochen moved first. He stepped out and turned into a chain of shadows. In just a second, he was in front of Jin Quan. So fast. Jin Quan's face changed color. He crossed his arms and performed his strongest martial technique, Ghostly Claw. His hands were like metal claws, striking against the abyss ancient sword with streaks of lightning. Ghostly Claw was a spiritual stage mid-class martial technique. Once it was mastered, their warriors' hands would become harder than iron. Jiang Yuochen slashed open the lightning on Jin Quan's claws and ended Jin Quan's martial technique. Crack. Jiang Yuochen's gaze was ruthless. He suddenly lowered his combat sword and broke Jin Quan's celestial body shield. The sword edge came down right above Jin Quan's head. It pierced through his chest and all the way to the ground with a loud noise. A pit with a diameter of 5 meters appeared on the ground. Crack, crack. The slates around the pit were all broken and arched, forming a round ashy billow. This is 1/His power of the 9th Prince. Their warriors around were all shocked and frightened. Even the mounts of the Square Commandery Prince and other warriors from the Square Commandery were startled. They neighed and kept stepping back. Phht. Jin Quan, who was originally sitting on the savage beast's back, cracked in half when a bloodline appeared in the middle of his body. He fell into the pit and his organs scattered everywhere. Even a top 10 master in the Square Commandery could not block Jiang Yuochen's one blow and had died in such an ugly way. How could Jiang Yuochen be so powerful? The Square Commandery Prince's face changed color greatly. His jaw was set firmly in anger and his hands started to quiver. The power Jiang Yuochen showed in that blow was beyond the Square Commandery Prince's expectations. He didn't have enough confidence that he would be able to block him. His hatred towards Jiang Yuochen was completely aroused. The threads of blood in his eyes became even denser. All of you can die, Jiang Yuochen roared. Then, he shifted all of his genuine chi into the Abyss Ancient Sword and activated all the inscriptions in the sword. Jiang Yuochen slashed out. Countless angry sword breaths burst out, forming into translucent sword shadows and charged out like a storm. Bang, bang. Constant screeches could be heard among the sword chi. When everything became quiet again, only the Square Commandery Prince stood alive on the ground. The other warriors from the Square Commandery had all become bodies in a pool of blood. There were at least 10 wounds on each of them. Some of them were even ripped to pieces by the sword chi and were mere body parts which no one could identify. The Square Commandery Prince looked even more wretched. His face, shoulders, and legs were all wounded by the sword chi. His clothes were pierced and he was covered in blood. He had a very disbelieving look on his face. He had reached the final state of the heaven realm, and he had the power to fight warriors in higher realms. In other words, he was standing on the peak of the heaven realm. How could he be wounded by a junior at the initial stage of the heaven realm? Normally, a warrior who could reach the final state of the heaven realm would at least be a one-realm fighting geniuses. Many of them were two-realm fighting geniuses or even three-realm fighting geniuses. The Square Commandery Prince was already a 2.5-realm fighting genius when he was young. Before the Square Commandery Prince could calm himself down, Jiang Yuochen appeared beside him with just a movement of his body, and then he slashed again. After knowing how powerful Jiang Yuochen was, the Square Commandery Prince was a little afraid. He didn't dare to fight with Jiang Yuochen again, so he performed a bodily movement and ran back to the palace. Still trying to run? You are a dead man today. Jiang Yuochen stepped on a slate and crushed it. He bowed slightly and flashed forward like an arrow. In just a moment, he had caught up with the Square Commandery Prince. Dragon in the sky. An illusory image of a flying dragon was formed in the void space after Jiang Yuochen's blow. It roared and flew toward the Square Commandery Prince. The Square Commandery Prince sensed the palm power at his back. He turned around immediately and punched out as well. Surprise cloud palm. 2 wisps of genuine chi from both of his palms integrated together and formed a ball of white light. The illusory image of the flying dragon crashed into the white light and tore it open, turning it into wisps of light haze. Pow! The Square Commandery Prince was blown out over 33 meters by the force of Jiang Yuochen's palm power. The Square Commandery Prince's martial cultivation was high enough that he managed to steady himself the moment he fell to the ground. He landed on his tiptoe, turned his body around and kept running towards the palace. Zhang Yuochen is too powerful. I'm no match for him. The Square Commandery Prince's arms were numb because of the pain. He knew he could block Zhang Yuochen only by getting back to the palace and activating the palace defending array. Zhang Tangai and the queen were just standing on the city wall, so they clearly saw what happened just now. The queen was pale with fear. She shuddered greatly and cold sweats kept dripping from her forehead. Zhang Tangai gasped and said, "Activate the palace defending array. Now." "We mustn't allow Zhang Yuochen to get in." "But the Square Commandery Prince is still out there," said a master from the black market. Zhang Tangai replied coldly, "Don't care about him. If we let Zhang Yuochen in because of him, we will all die." Seeing Zhang Yuochen coming nearer and nearer, Zhang Tangai was also a little afraid. He shouted angrily, "You stupid servant! I told you to activate the palace defending array. Are you deaf? Do it." The master sensed Zhang Tangai's fury, and he quickly went away and asked the people in charge to activate the inscription of array that defended the palace.